I'd like to officially call to order the regularly scheduled Traffic and Parking Commission meeting of October 7th, 2024. Let the record reflect all commissioners, except for Commissioner Vlad Anderson, are present. Vice Chair Reichert will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no ceremonial items this evening. Presentations. There are no presentation items this evening. Public comment. This is the time for public comments to address the Commission on matters not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the Traffic and Parking Commission. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. If you would like to participate, please fill out a speaker card and turn it into the Commission Secretary, and your name will be called. Speaker cards are available at the agenda review table by the entrance. Madam Commission Secretary, have we received any speaker cards?
We've received one speaker card, and our speaker is Dean Stridell. Dean?
Hi. Okay, I'm all but nervous right here, guys. Am I supposed to, in this one, right here? Is that good? All right. I'm not real good at speaking, so put up with me. Just as you can see, I'm not really good at drawing, when you saw my map right there, all right? So you can kind of make fun of it or draw on it or doodle whatever you want onto it. I've lived in Lake Forest for over 30 years and haven't complained too much, but I'm here tonight asking you to consider installing no overnight parking on Serrano. As you can see on the map, there's just certain sections there in yellow that people park there overnight. And typically it's motorhomes and campers that park there and been parking there for a good 6 months, 8 months, and they park on one side of the street. We okay? And then move to the other side of the street a couple days later. And so they don't get ticketed or towed. If they could put up some no parking from like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., that would eliminate that. And I have no problem with people parking, till wee hours of the morning. It's just overnight. For a while there was some painter vans that were parked there. And after a short period of time, somehow they decided that wasn't a good place to park. I believe it gives the person that owns the vehicle there an opportunity to park there for free instead of going to a lot and having to pay. It's also, I believe, a dangerous corner. Some corners there, it's dark, and here's the vehicle. The owner moves it back and forth. You come around a corner, it's dark, and you wish you were looking for the big camper there. I'm just trying to stop people from living there as well. The person that owns this could actually live in their van. And just as a concern citizen, I don't want to see that happening in my neighborhood, and I would hopefully have you consider putting up some new parking signs there that prohibit them from parking there overnight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions on my great map?
That's nice.
If you need me drawing, I can do maps.
Any commissioners like to comment?
Can I ask? So, I understand the map. It's actually quite good.
Thank you.
And the motorhome he's talking about has been parked there now for 11 months on Serrano. It'll be a year next month. Can we, at our next meeting perhaps, bring back, I know it takes at least 2 of us to ask for an agenda item, but can we bring back what is the ordinance about parking motorhomes on Serrano or any street like that? And what is the enforcement policy? Just so we know what that is. I would make that request for next month's agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, Vice Chair Reichert, if you and the commissioner would like me to come back at the next meeting to prepare a presentation on our ordinance in regards to the recreational vehicles or motorhomes, I'll be happy to do that. So if you see fit, please agendize that for me, and I will make sure that we'll have it on the next agenda item.
I'll second that request. I've mentioned that before about RVs, that I've been getting complaints, not in this particular street, but in several other areas within the city.
Tran, didn't we have a draft revised ordinance that went to the council February, March sometime, 2020? And they delayed it, I think, because people were using motorhomes to park on the street during the pandemic or something. Do you remember?
I do recall those items were discussed. We were talking about permit parking at the time, including RV parking permits.
Right.
That was pushed by council. They asked us to not continue to look down that path at the moment. However, there has been a new ordinance that did take place. This TPC did review that ordinance. I believe it was December of last year, maybe not this specific commission, but this commission itself made got an opportunity to hear what council decided, because it went to council first, then we took it back to TPC as a note to the commission. So I'll be more than happy to bring that back to reemphasize what that ordinance says and what that means to not only the public, but our enforcement for recreational vehicles.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, any other speakers from the public?
No more speakers.
Moving on to the consent calendar, items 1 and 2. This is the time for the commission to consider matters listed under the consent calendar. Do any commissioners wish to discuss any of these items, or is there a motion to consider these items?
I'll make a motion to approve number 1 and poll number 2 for discussion.
A second.
Number 2 is the Ask Lake Forest reports.
I want that one too. Okay, I want 2 also.
Just for record-keeping purposes, who did the second?
I second.
Okay, Commissioner Camarena.
Motion's been made. You gotta call for the motion.
I did.
We have to call for the motion.
I thought she had to put the vote up.
I made a motion to approve number
Seconded,
1
and then
and
she puts the
poll
vote up.
number 2. It says public comment on our screen. Okay, now we can vote.
Now you can vote. That motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Innocent absent.
Okay, for consent, item number 2. Vice Chair Reichert.
Yeah, I have just a general question. There's a lot of these Ask Lake Forest reports, because I know it's been a few months since we got one. So about half of these are questions about light timing. I pulled up to a light and I had to wait X number of minutes or whatever. And then it says contacted the guy, the contractor, yeah. So what do they do in these cases? So if a light was set for a 2-minute, 20-second green duration, and then somebody complained that they thought that was too long, or they thought it was 5 minutes, whatever, and then the guy goes out there, what do they do? Do they look at the control box and say, yeah, it's set for 2 minutes and 20 seconds per the synchronization program, and I'm not going to change it? Or do they change it? Can they change it? How does that work?
Yeah, so, sorry about that. We do have quite a bit of an extensive way of looking at things. So when we have the residents who call in for signal timing typically, so in this, for instance, if they call in about signal timing, we call them back and we ask, can you please provide the time of day and the time? And when we get that information in regards to time of day and time, we then look at whether or not it was during a coordinated timing plan, which is usually the AM peak hours, typically speaking 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., or the midday, which is around 11:45, maybe 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., maybe 2 p.m. if we extend it, and then the PM peak, which is usually starting from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., potentially 5 to 7 p.m. So those are our times where we look at it and it's under coordination. So the example that was provided, if they said that they were waiting for 2 minutes, then most likely we as staff know that it potentially could be during coordination. We verified that with the resident if that was during those times that I just mentioned. And then we then send that out to our maintenance consultant to double check if it's running and the time has not drifted. Because there's a clock, just like a watch, right? In every single controller cabinet. We want to make sure that the time is correct. It's synced with the world time, that we're not going into that coordination earlier. So if someone said, I drove there around 3:56 p.m., I would think that it drifted about 4 minutes or so and that we went into coordination early, so we have to reset the clock at those. So we'll tell the consultant will tell the contractor to go out physically to the box and reset the timer. If it's outside of those times, then there's something different going on, because typically we run it what we call free, which is on demand. So it'll cycle through who is sitting on our loops or our video detection cameras and give them a green based on our timing plan and our minimum greens, our minimum yellows, and then obviously our minimum reds. So we go through that analysis of, knowing exactly what the problem is from a consultant standpoint and my standpoint, and then we refer that back out to the field, which is our maintenance contractors, to double check and verify that that is actually occurring. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time because we don't see it right then and there. So we'll come back the next day, we verify the time again, see if it happens again. If it doesn't, then we just go back in the box and let the resident know that we didn't encounter it, but we'll be monitoring it throughout the week to let them know that that's what we're doing. But usually we'll see it because it's typically something that they saw, especially if it's a detection issue where it skips their turn. Sometimes it skips their turn and people don't know that it skipped their turn because emergency vehicle just went through. And when an emergency vehicle just went through, it's going to cycle one time and then go back to the regular timing plan. So that's some, for instances or examples when that occurs. But generally speaking, it is the staff getting better information or getting information from the resident. We verify it in-house, and then we take it out to the field, verify it in the field to make sure that it did occur and this is what's going on. We provide the fix, and then we verify internally and remotely double check that it's running at the right time and then at the timing plan as well. And that's pretty much our process.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
I'll move item 2.
I got a question still
Oh,
on 2.
sorry.
Sorry. On the item here on Lake Forest at the 3-way stop sign, they're saying Rue de Valor. It's kind of where Bake continues, curves back around and hits Lake Forest. I thought that you had brought up that there was, you were looking at that particular intersection for a potential signal or a traffic circle. Can you remind us what the plan was there?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair Faust. Yes, that was actually part of the transportation operational improvement study that we're doing right now. We have AGA engineers on board with us. They're doing the data collection. As part of their scope, they are required to look at that particular intersection, Lake Forest and Bake or Rue de Fortuna. It is scheduled on ours to have a signal one day. We don't believe that is probably the most appropriate implementation, but that's why we have AGA engineers to look at other alternatives other than a signal. Based on standard practice, a signal or a roundabout is sufficient if we go through the intersection evaluations. So we are looking forward to that, and we will bring that back to the Traffic and Parking Commission when it's available and ready for your review and ultimate approval. And that is expected to be later in the end of the fiscal year, so expect that sometime in spring of 2025.
Thank you. I'll move to motion to pass consent item number 2.
Second.
The motion passes with Commissioner Rickert no vote and Commissioner Anderson absent.
I voted yes, so.
We'll do a revote on that one, if you may. I think we had technical difficulties. Let's do that one more time. This is for Ask Lake Forest Summary Report, agenda item number 2.
Okay.
And please vote.
Yes.
The motion passes with Commissioner Anderson absent.
Thank you. This is the time for discussion on items 3 and 4. Tran Traffic Engineering Manager, please proceed with your presentation of item number 3.
Great, thank you, Chair Faust. Let me get this presentation up and running. If you guys can give me a thumbs up to see it on Titan on our screen. Mine is kind of fuzzy right now. There we go. All right, so again, thank you, Chair Faust, thank you, Commissioners. Tonight, my presentation will walk all of us through the nuances of establishing speed limits in our city. So as you may or may not be aware, the speed limits are established through California state law, specifically the California Vehicle Code, which governs how speed limits are established and what the default speed limits are. So if you could see here, a 2-lane road, undivided roadway, the default speed limit would be 55. Yep, sorry.
The screens aren't in front of us, aren't showing us the same presentation. Usually it comes up. Did you get it?
This one here, and then that one. There you go.
I'm good. I have it now.
I just guessed.
Okay.
We're usually more organized, sir.
All right, I apologize. You could tell we're a little rusty for this, for a little bit of a layoff. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to recover while I go back to the swing of things here. So like I was saying, let's get back to the presentation. So our speed limits are established by California state law, specifically the California Vehicle Code. So again, that's something that we as staff are just following state law and trying to establish these speed limits. So basically, the California Vehicle Code says for a two-lane undivided roadway, your maximum speed is 55 miles per hour. All other roadways are 65 miles per hour. To establish a lower speed than those that I just mentioned, we are required to conduct what we call an engineering and traffic survey and adopt that by local ordinance. So every city has to go through this process every so often so that we could utilize some of the electronic devices that our sheriff's department, our police department, our law enforcement utilizes to address speeding concerns throughout our city. So this is very helpful both ways in public safety, as well as it also establishes certain speeds for maximum speeds for our residents to navigate our roadways. So there are some exceptions, obviously, throughout the California Vehicle Code. There are some that allows us to establish 15 miles per hour for these types of roadways. We also are allowed to establish 25 miles per hour for school zones, senior centers, and residence districts. So those are the things that we could arbitrarily say that this is present, it meets the definition in the California Vehicle Code, therefore these will be defaulted at 25 miles per hour, so to speak. So what's the city's authority, right? And the city's authority to set speed limits at lower speeds than the legal maximums of 55 and 65, like I just mentioned, this is our right to go ahead and do a local ordinance to establish this. And again, this is to allow for effective policing using electronic devices. So your radars, your LiDAR, those things that, and any technology that comes out in the future, but those are the main ones that we use here in our city. This allows our officers to be able to utilize those devices for speeding tickets and speed enforcement. So an engineering and traffic survey. So this gets a little complicated. I'm trying to walk you through this because this is something that I know we get a lot of questions about, so bear with me. That's why I'm going through this, so that the public as well as the commission and everyone else is informed of how we go about business. We're not arbitrarily just picking and saying, hey, this is 40 and this is 30 or whatnot. So first, we look at prevailing speeds, which is a survey that samples the traveling speeds during free flow conditions. This generates what we call the 85th percentile. So if a sample of 100, that 85th spot and below is deemed fair and reasonable for the conditions that everyone saw during that sample. And so then that is rounded to the nearest 5 mile per hour increment. So if it says the speed limit was supposed to be 39, for instance, we'll round up to 40 miles per hour, right? Or if the 85th said it was 39, I should speak that way. So there are two exceptions when considering the 85th percentile speed, and staff continues to use these exceptions when appropriate. So either the 85th percentile speed may be optionally rounded down instead of up. That's an option for us. Or we do have what we could do as a 5 mile per hour reduction if it's justified within the engineering and traffic survey. Usually that's called roadside obstruction not apparent to the motorist. So that's something that we would evaluate, determine, things like collision data, because that's not something readily available to folks. They won't know about that. We will consider that into the speed limits if we want to justify it to go lower. And then say the 85th, say again, the example is 39 miles per hour. It rounds to 40. If we want to drop it down to 35, we could either do exception 1, which is optionally round down, or we could do 2 and justify it saying that this segment of roadway had a few accidents that could have been correctable if the speeds were lower or something like that, and that we, or accidents of 5 or more, we document that, we sign and stamp it and say that we will lower that by 5 miles per hour and justify the 35 miles per hour versus the 40 because it will naturally round up. So that's that part. The new thing that was put into law is AB 43. And I'm going to go in more detail on this with the next few slides, but it does have all these aspects that we will go through. AB 43 was something that was introduced for our governor to sign back in about 2022. It went into effect in January 1, 2023, and we have the opportunity to utilize some of these because there was a requirement that the Caltrans, or the California Department of Transportation, would come up with some of these clarifications of what some of these things mean, meaning safety corridor, a definition of what that means, what a definition of a high concentration of bikes and peds mean, and that would not be in effect until July 1st, 2024, to be utilized by local jurisdictions. So there was some time frame for the allowance for Caltrans to put all these laws together, make sure it makes sense, go through their own commissions, and then finally get it approved and have an effective date. And that's why you're seeing that today, or why you're seeing that in the staff report and the discussion of potentially lowering speeds, utilizing AB 43. So the other part, like I alluded to, we do look at and evaluate collision data to identify trends of high-frequency speed-related collisions to factor into our justification of potentially lowering the 85th percentile, like I stated, by 5 miles per hour. And then, of course, roadside conditions that are not readily apparent to the motorist. So some people might say that it's a blind curve, but everyone's driving that same blind curve, so you wouldn't necessarily say that's not apparent. Typically, what is not apparent is if that curve happened to drop into a railroad crossing and now you have an obstruction or something like that that prevented you from doing that, you could cite that. You talk about school zones that we could go 25 miles per hour, but there's some special circumstance there, whether it's a special program that's being located at the location, or, like I said, for the example, is collision data. You don't see that. Motorists wouldn't see that. They wouldn't know that there's collisions except for hearing about it on the news. And even if they remember, they may not know it's that segment. So these are the opportunities for us to justify lowering the speed limits by 5 miles per hour. And just to note, excuse me, these surveys do expire. So that's why we're coming back today. Typically speaking, we generally do a practice of resurveying the streets every 5 to 10 years, but we're required to come back every 7 to 10 years due to the fact that we use the radar enforcement tool because that allows us to utilize that up to 7 years. So you'll see us come back every now and then, but this is why you're seeing it probably for the first time, at least this commission, and that's why we're going through the explanation of what an engineering traffic survey is and some new laws that's coming through. So, like I was talking about, AB 43, so new law, right? So recently, California legislature enacted AB 43. It allowed for a reduction of speed limits by up to 5 miles per hour for safety reasons. This legislation provides an opportunity to counteract the general trend of increasing speeds. So that usually could be attributed to advancements in vehicle technology, because obviously everyone probably here knows that we got better, more efficient, faster cars that could handle the road more than we've seen it in years past. So that's something that we need to address. So people could pick up speed pretty good. Road conditions, obviously, we have better pavement. Thank you, Tom, and his crew in the Public Works Department to making sure our streets are nice and clean to drive very fast in if we want, or very slow in. So it depends on how you want to drive. I advise you to drive low and at the speed limit if possible. But other things of signal timing, our traffic signals are a little bit smarter these days. We are doing synchronization projects. We're doing different technologies to help and assist people get to their destination a little bit quicker. And that's our goal for the most of it, but we want to make sure that that opportunity for us to allow you to go through our city a little bit quicker, we want to make sure you're doing it at a safe speed or with safety in mind. So previous cities lacked the authority to lower the speed limits based solely on safety or community needs. However, AB 43 enables local jurisdictions to consider accident history, which is referred to as a safety corridor, and adjacent land use such as like schools, retail centers, places of worship, and determining the appropriate speed limits, which is referred to that high pedestrian or high concentration of pedestrian and bike use. So it is something that we finally get a chance to evaluate, and I think it's something that we need to really consider. Additionally, there were 3 other additions to the California Vehicle Code that's shown on this slide here. It addressed what we call quote-unquote speed creep. That's basically when the speed or the new speed surveys continue to increase to a point that may not be desirable or potentially to a point where it gets to the maximum speed limits, right? And at that point, we go and look, and this AB 43 allows us to reevaluate what happened previously and what we established previously. And when we do that, we're allowed to go back and approve the previous established speed limits as long as nothing has changed. So that's kind of the key point there, that it has to be the exact apples for apples comparison. Like, for instance, a new driveway or a new signal that happened to drop down in the middle of that segment, we wouldn't be able to utilize this type of exception. Tonight and throughout our survey, these 3 are not being used, just for your understanding. For our survey, we didn't have to encounter this, but it's just something food for thought, what AB 43 is. It also allowed the use of establishing a 20-mile-per-hour zone in a business activity district. That's usually associated with downtowns. I would want to say Lake Forest has a downtown, but we're not one of those cities that really establish a specific downtown Main Street feel. Hopefully one day we will, but at the moment we are not utilizing this due to the fact that we don't meet that criteria. And finally, it allowed us to establish a 15-mile-per-hour zone. I know we talked about that with the uncontrolled blind side streets, where we could establish 15 miles per hour. But if the engineering and traffic survey justifies a 15-mile-per-hour zone or a 20-mile-per-hour zone, now we have the ability to go ahead and post that and establish that if the engineering and traffic survey sees it in that manner with our survey. So that's really good to know. And also to note, AB 43 and the usage of AB 43 in the proposed engineering and traffic survey in the staff report is in alignment with our vision statement and the strategic plan. It talks about that we want to have a safe city. And so that's part of the vision statement. The strategic plan discusses the similar things of having a safe city or safer city. The other part is to improve bike lane usage, to lower collisions, make public safety a number 1 priority, things of that nature that all this would jump upon, because as we all are aware, speed is the primary factor in the severity of traffic collisions. So if we could lower that speed limit, the potential for a severe accident is lowered as well. So that's why AB 43 was signed by our governor and being utilized for all the cities throughout California. In addition to that, we also have the understanding that we want to promote bicyclists. And when we do that, if we have the speeds that are lower, I would say that obviously the avid bicyclists, they're going to ride it no matter what. But what we're trying to reach out to is the recreational bicyclists, the kids that go to school, to use the bike lane and not use the sidewalk. The sidewalk is limited in width at times. We would love to have 10-foot sidewalks all over the place, but that's just not reality. And if we could lower the speeds and make it more comfortable on the on-street bike lanes, and we are already doing our part by providing buffered bike lanes, we have the green paint down. That is something that we are trying to make sure we're meeting the council's strategic plan to address and improve our bike lanes and bike safety. So that is the other thing I would want to mention about AB 43 and why we're moving towards some of the reductions you probably have seen throughout the staff report. So, sorry for the long-winded background, history, laws, and all that good stuff. Let's get to the actual meat of this. Here's the engineering and traffic survey for 2024. Here are the speed limit recommendations. As you can see, we have a lot of segments in our city, about 125 street segments that we surveyed, and staff recommends establishing 3 new segments that were newly surveyed, which is right out here at Civic Center, right? We got those new streets in, and we want to make sure that they're posted appropriately. We also had 62 segments, a little bit over 50, well, about 50%, I should say a little less, to maintain the existing speed limit, and then 60 segments that are proposed being reduced. Out of those 60 segments, 32 is being used by AB 43, which is the safety corridor designation, which is the discussion of collisions and the data point of only utilizing that if we meet a certain percentage, right? Right now, we're only using 10% of our city that is publicly maintained. We have upwards of a maximum of calling a safety corridor up to 20% of a city. So we're not using it to the maximum extent. We still have room to grow in that safety corridor category. As far as 11 segments that are being used as AB 43 high concentration bikes and peds, I remind you that is the one that when you're adjacent to certain land use, you expect that there will be bicyclists and peds, retail centers, schools, religious worship areas. That is areas that we could now identify and lower those speed limits. So that's what we're doing with those 11. The other 17 are just 85th percentile. For the most part, you're going to see throughout our map here is that we want to see consistency in our speed limits. When it makes sense to go faster, and then when it's sense to make it go a little bit slower in sense because of the land use and adjacent land use. What I would like to say in here, which is a big surprise, is that we have 0 segments that are increasing. And that is something that in my line of work I have not seen in a very long time. We usually see a majority of things increasing versus being decreasing. So it's a good thing for us because, again, I think AB 43 is addressing some of the concerns that the community has in the past and introducing some things that would ultimately make our city a safer city. So with that, like I said, we had so many segments that were dropping and fluctuating as far as the versus the existing. Here's a map of all the proposed speed limits throughout our city. I didn't want to go through the 400 plus pages of the staff report to you tonight. I'm already belaboring this by way too long, and I don't enjoy listening to my own voice, so this is why we are moving forward. So these are all the changes. Obviously, it's color-coded. I apologize for those that are colorblind due to the fact that we just have so many colors of the rainbow. I had to use them all. The biggest thing I really want to point out is out of all these streets, which one of those streets are affected by AB 43? Majority of them that we are talking about were reduced segments in the amount of about 43 of the 60 that we're looking at. And so you could see here in the red, we are utilizing the safety corridor designation. Again, 20% maximum of city maintained streets. We are only using approximately little less than 10%. And so we are well within our rights to go ahead and utilize those for those streets. The other portion of AB 43, again, the high concentration of peds and bikes, as you can see, there's certain areas in this general vicinity that addresses that. We got a lot of residential homes, we got clubhouses, we got pools. So for instance, we've had conversations with our residents about Catalina and Monarch, which is kind of up in the Baker Ranch area in the north of our city. That we're using high concentration of peds and bikes. That's due to the fact that there are clubhouses, large clubhouses and parks adjacent to that they have to traverse over those types of streets. And that is one of those things that we were looking forward to seeing if there was an opportunity for us to lower the speed limits to make it a little bit safer for them to cross. But with that, all these reductions in our city with this proposed survey is all in an effort to finally consider safety versus just going with straight up the 85th percentile. And so with that, I would like to recommend the Traffic Parking Commission to recommend to the City Council to introduce an ordinance to establish I'm going to push this, prima facie speed limit throughout the city. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Before we begin Commissioner comments, Madam Secretary, do we have anyone from the public that would like to comment on item 3?
We have received no request to speak on this item.
Do any commissioners wish to discuss this item?
Just a general question. I'm obviously familiar with the 85th percentile, because when you're writing a radar ticket and you're going to court, you want to make sure that it's up to date and all that stuff, because that's one of the things. But I never was sure, how exactly do they conduct the speed survey? I mean, they got a guy sitting on the sidewalk working radar. That wouldn't seem to be efficient. But generally speaking, how is it that they do that, if you know?
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner Armando. That's a great question. We get that asked all the time because nowadays, we have technology, right? We could put a trailer out there and that gets data, but by law, we cannot utilize that for an engineering traffic survey because there's no human component to it. And so currently, the law states that we have to be in an unmarked vehicle. We cannot have any construction activity going on. We can't have anything that may influence the speeds. So that's why the person that needs to be behind the one with the doing the survey needs to make sure that the conditions are good for a survey to really get the free flow speeds. So they're usually in an unmarked van or car, and what they're doing is they're parked in a specific part of the segment that would capture the majority of folks going down that segment during free flow times. So it wouldn't be during peak hours. It would not be during gridlock times because you would not have a speed limit higher than probably 10 miles per hour. But it's around 10 a.m. to maybe 12 p.m., 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We try not to do night surveys because we know that sometimes the speeds get a little higher during night surveys, especially when it gets closer towards the 10 p.m. hour when there's little traffic whatsoever. And so that's how it's pretty much done, and we just follow the state law of how it should be conducted. And obviously, the other part is that the other requirement is the devices we use has to be certified, and that's part of the appendices of the 400 plus documents. There are certifications of that. We are following and being compliant with state law.
Are they using LiDAR now or just radar, do you know?
We use both. So in our case, we typically use LiDAR just because that's the latest tech.
Yeah. And then just out of curiosity too, sometimes you have the little rubber, little sensor things going across the road or running over, it's counting it. Does that have something to do with that, or is that just totally different?
It can be, but that's not typically how we administer it because, again, that's not something that a human being is going to be there watching it and getting the data and receiving that data. And so they're not marking it down to what speeds were each vehicle. That is more automated, and that's for more of data collection. So we get speeds, we get classification of vehicle, we get volume data. Mainly it's volume data. So that's what you see if those little tubes or hoses along those streets. We're just getting data, seeing how many cars go through each lane, what type of vehicles are going through there based on wheelbase, so that we can make a better determination, is our roadways being used the way we thought it's going to be used, and then that in turn goes into Tom's deal of payment rehab. So we address that with saying, hey, there's a lot more trucks out here, our Director of Public Works, we have more trucks, we may want to look at the pavement section and maybe we go back at it and make a better recommendation for the roadway. So that's how it plays out with those types of tubes.
A little thicker asphalt, I guess, then in that case, right? Thanks.
Any other commissioners?
Hi. I'm fine with most of these, but some of them don't make sense. I'm sorry. I'll just pick Lake Forest Drive, for example. This is recommending from Muirlands all the way up to Trabuco that Lake Forest Drive go from 50 to 45. And that's a 3-lane road on both sides, okay? And then you hit Trabuco Road and you go up the hill, it turns to 2 lanes, right? And it wants to reduce that entire segment the 3-lane segment on both sides and the 2-lane segment on both sides to 45 miles an hour. But the study done in non-peak hours said the 85 percentile speed is 52 to 53 miles an hour. But why would you reduce it? There's no exits in that entire section from Muirlands to Trabuco. There's one exit near the railroad tracks. There's 2 exits on Lake Forest between Toledo and Toledo and Serrano. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you reduce that speed in that section on a 3-lane road where the 85th percentile is 52 to 53 miles an hour? And then on the other hand, Bake Parkway, it says, from, I gotta get my notes here. It wants to reduce Bake Parkway from 55 to 50 past Trabuco, which kind of makes sense, but Bake Parkway, got a lot of papers here, sorry guys. From Toledo Way to Trabuco Road, keep it at 50 miles an hour. That makes no sense. There's an exit on Via del Rio, which is dangerous as hell. There's another street at Cali Entrada that's always impacted. If there's a section that needs 45, that would be it. I mean, it's just, this whole thing is quite strange. And then when you drive down Trabuco or Lake Forest or Trabuco or Bake during non-peak hours, you can't do 35 miles an hour. There's so much traffic. So it just doesn't make sense. Why would you reduce the speed limit on Lake Forest Drive when it's, to me, it doesn't seem to be any safety issues there at all. I don't ever remember seeing an accident report saying we've had accidents on that street between Muirlands and Trabuco. I'm sure we have, but in our report we get, it's never near the top. It's just not logical. So that's my comment.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the map for AB 43. So Lake Forest Drive, as you mentioned, from the freeway all the way up to Muirlands, that was the 85th percentile being 45 miles per hour. If I'm going to jump back and forth through the map so that we don't get lost, because I do, when I drive on these things, I make people get motion sickness. So I'm going to go real slow. Lake Forest Drive is all red, which means that the designation would be a proposed 45 miles per hour from pretty much Rockfield all the way down to Portola.
Right.
And that's consistent, right? I think one of the hardest things our officers have to do is determine what speed limit it is for the entire arterial roadway when they're doing speed enforcement. So this makes it a lot easier for enforcement and continuity and consistency. One is that then we would have better signal timing due to the fact that we have a consistent speed throughout Lake Forest Drive, and that allows us to address kind of the travel times throughout this corridor since we have the project going on right now. But I do want to mention that between, what is that? That is Muirlands all the way up to Town Center. We've had accidents. It is considered a safety corridor, so there were accidents along those segments of roadway that was severe or fatal, and that's why we are utilizing that designation. So I know that we've discussed that might not be something that is readily apparent to the motorists that drive up and down here, but unfortunately, the data provided to us through SWITTers as well as our Sheriff's Department and their reports, we determined that these are classified and can be designated as safety corridors. If you recall, some of these do fall in our top 10 list for collision analysis. I will be bringing that to the Traffic and Parking Commission by the end of this year. Some of these intersections do pop up regularly, one of which is Lake Forest and Town Center specifically. If you're aware, there was one that took out the sign in that corner, probably in the last couple months. But there are severe accidents along that segment of roadway, and that's why we utilize our ability to utilize AB 43 to lower the speed limit. For one, continuity, the other is for safety. As far as Bake Parkway is concerned, that was simply the 85th percentile, except for the point of, I believe it is North Point and Commerce Center. That showed a little bit of a higher speed, but that again was for continuity. It was 50 miles per hour. I believe it would have been, if we'd used the 85th percentile in that segment, to be 55 miles per hour. If you guys recall, I believe there was 2 major accidents, 1 fatal, actually 2 fatal. And so that's why we believe that qualifies for a safety corridor at that section of Big Parkway. Everywhere else was 85th. So again, unfortunately for me, we are here to only provide you the data and support that data support that with the raw data, which shows you the survey that we did. And so when it hits the 85th and we're moving forward with the 85th, there's not much wiggle room for us to adjust the speeds. The law is the law, and we're doing our best to follow it. Again, I would reiterate that AB 43 is a positive rather than a negative in this area. I know that we want to get through our cities a little bit quicker, but it gives us an opportunity for us to, again, address safety for this one time for the next 7 years. So, I don't want to take anything away, and I appreciate your comment, Vice Chair Reichert, but I really do believe that these are, one, justified, and the other, taking into consideration our community concerns throughout the years that we've been here, especially when people have continually asked to address speeding concerns throughout our city.
But just to follow up on if we want to be consistent, then why would we make Trabuco Road from Bake to Peachwood 50 miles an hour and Peachwood all the way to El Toro 45? Why not make the whole thing 45 or 50? It's not logical.
Yeah, so for Trabuco itself, it's consistent for the most part, but the 50 miles per hour, again, there was no, we didn't have a high concentration of peds and bikes at the time. I know we have a trail. Don't get me wrong. We have the trail. We have the equestrian trail. We have the off-street trail that we could have considered the high concentration of peds and bikes on Trabuco between Bake and Peachwood. It didn't seem apparent to us that that is something that we needed to do. But the transition from a Bake Parkway, where we know that there is a lot of volume going southbound on Trabuco from Bake, that we want to be consistent with that speed limit when you're coming off of Bake. And then once you get into more of the land uses adjacent on Trabuco, where the retail starts showing up, where the schools start showing up, and then where the residential products are showing up, that's when we initiated the safety corridor to get the speed limits to 45 and, start tearing those down, just because we know that adjacent to some of that means there's more opportunities for turning movements, opportunity for peds and bikes, and then that means that since we have more of that type of road use, we have the higher potential of having some type of accident. And when we have speeds upwards of higher speeds, again, I reiterate that primary factor of the severity of collisions is speed. And so any opportunity for me to use AB 43 around these types of land uses, we're going to do that, just because to me it makes sense, because if a person traveling at that speed could reduce the probability that someone survives, I think we want to take that opportunity.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Is there a motion to consider this item?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
The motion passes with Vice Chair Rickert voting no, and Anderson, Commissioner Anderson, absent.
Moving on to item 4, Tom Wheeler, Director of Public Works. Please proceed with your presentation of item 4.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is a update that we gave council, and we want to hit all the commissioners, all the commissions with, just to get you guys up to speed with what we're doing with our capital improvement program update. So it's a quarterly update. But this goes back actually till April. So with that, I will turn on the clicker, see if we can't go through this. So we have 68 projects that are currently in our capital improvement program that are in various stages, various projects in various stages of completion. Total budget of about $35 million that we're implementing back into the community. We've finished 5 projects since the last April update, and those included a street parkway tree replacement program, about 90 trees that we replaced that were damaging private property and walls, stuff of that nature, and then we replanted another 90 trees. Finished about 8 different ADA ramps to keep us up to code and start going through with our ADA. We're on phase 14 of that program. And then our El Toro bus shelters, we renovated some of those. One of them, a car caught fire, or a truck actually, caught fire right next to, they conveniently pulled over right next to the bus shelter, and it got singed and damaged, so we were able to complete that renovation. And we completed redoing the planters along Ridge Route Median to make them match the cobblestone pattern that we have at Veterans Park. And we finished our senior center patio cover, which really turned that outdoor patio that really wasn't used because of the heat and the direct sunlight in the afternoon. And it really made it a nice, usable space. It really turned out really, really nice. The seniors really enjoy that. And earlier in 2024, some of the projects we completed, a slurry seal of the sports park and an office renovation there, our annual sidewalk repairs. Back in 2023, when we started the 2-year CIP program, we finished another 13 projects, which we've updated you before, and that was about $7 million back into the community last year. So in total, we've got 13 projects completed last year, 7 to date. So we got 20 of the 68 CIP projects are completed so far this year. The rest are in various stages, like I said. We've got 13 currently in construction. We're just finishing up the pavement slurry seal in Zone A. So that's about done now, wrapping up the paperwork on that. We're also doing the new street name signs. You've probably seen that popping up now in town. We started closer to the freeway and working our way east. That'll be done next year. We've paved Lake Forest Drive up in Foothill Ranch, and we're in the midst of finishing up the Trabuco Road Trail rehab. We finished that work up. That's all under the same contract with All American Asphalt. They've just about finished the Ascension Cemetery left turn holding pocket, and they are into the resurfacing between Bacon and Peachwood. That will all occur next week. The grinding, the overlay, avoid Trabuco for next week, and then it'll be a beautiful road. So you got your warning now.
I'm not going on there.
Don't go on Trabuco. We were waiting for Edison to move those to add new electrical conduit down there. That's what those pictures are of along Trabuco. Other construction projects, you might see them pulling conduit along Lake Forest Drive. That's part of the synchronization project. We've got one going on Alton and along Portola also. We're working on the shade structure at Pittsford Park. We're doing some drainage improvements around here. And we're also doing our annual park amenities replacement. So picnic benches, trash cans, things like that take a beating out there. We awarded a number of contracts in July. Actually, we've already Slurry Geronimo, we'll do Muirlands, we'll finish Muirlands up today and tomorrow, and those two streets will be slurry sealed, and we'll finish that up the next couple of weeks. We'll start a project at Rockfield to do some median work down there. And then projects in pre-construction, we've got 10 projects that are various stages of contract award. Maybe they're ordering parts, setting their schedules up, things of that nature, ordering long lead items. 3 Lifton projects, we're widening Geronimo Road. At Lake Forest, we're widening or adding lanes at Rancho Parkway at Lake Forest, and also on Los Alisos at Rockfield, we'll be adding another lane there. So those are all awarded in various stages of moving forward, so you'll see them in the field in the next couple months. Our protected permissive left turn phase 2, we took that to council. Council wanted some more information. We're bringing that back to them in November to discuss what to do with that project. Those 2 projects were along Alton Parkway. We've got some conservation programs going in, some park projects, some lighting improvements at Heroes Park, and some other park projects that we're working on also. I'll also be fixing up the sidewalks and getting rid of those sidewalk lift and potential trip hazards for the year. Also in Zone D, which is our largest zone, and it was our largest zone before we added Baker Ranch streets into our zone. So we're going to break that up into 2 phases. We're going to do all the repairs first, where it's failed. We're going to then, that also gives us a year before we slurry seal over it, and that'll give us a year to get the fiber optic companies that are in tearing up all the roads a chance to get in, tear up those roads, add their fiber to those roads. Then we'll come back and slurry seal after they're done to really keep those streets looking clean. So that project's in advertisement right now for bidding. Bacon Trabuco widening. Believe it or not, that is advertised for bid right now. So we'll be opening bids shortly and then moving forward with that project to widen towards the Edison or towards the north on that project site and get ready with that project. And then we've got 18 projects in design phase, including the traffic operational improvement study. They're data collecting right now. Heroes Park sports field, we're leveling out the baseball fields there. We're working on our pavement management plan update. We talked about slurry seal Zone D. We're also designing a next phase of resurfacing. Once we're done with Trabuco, we'll move to Lake Forest and Bake Parkways. We're also finalizing design for Geronimo Road at El Toro, that widening project. We're acquiring right-of-way for that. With that project, that'll all be bid as one. We'll add median islands to El Toro Road. We'll resurface El Toro, and we'll do a little median work on Trabuco. That'll all be one project that should be out to bid once we get the right-of-way, hopefully in early half of next year. We've got Bake Parkway in Toledo, we've got Bake Parkway in Geronimo, and Los Alisos and Muirlands are the last 3 large design projects that are underway for widenings and part of our Lifton projects. And some of the smaller projects, park projects, we're installing a pickleball court at El Toro Park, a lacrosse rink in Foothill Ranch Park, looking citywide at where we can replace turf, get rid of grass turf that takes up a lot of irrigation for drought-tolerant things. We're looking at synchronization projects on Irvine Boulevard and Trabuco Road, Bacon Rockfield, and some more turf stuff. And looking at a little wall enhancement and aesthetic improvement along some of the arterial walls on Rockfield, if we can paint the intersection interchange or add something to that. So that's a little project we're looking at. Our latest award, which I always like to celebrate that, was for last year when we finished Vintage Park. It was recognized by the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Orange County branch, for the outstanding Parks and Recreation project of the year. So that was a nice little treat. That project was worked on all year. We had a tough winter, but we opened it in time for the first day of summer vacation, so that was nice. So in summary, we've finished 20 projects out of the 68, 13 are in construction, 10 are moving into construction, 18 projects are in design, and we have 7 projects in the pre-design phase, and that's kind of a snapshot of where we're at with our big projects around town. So any questions?
Do we have any public comment, Madam Secretary?
No speakers have been received.
Commissioner comments? Go ahead.
By the way, the Rimgate Park shelter rehab was completed last week.
That's right, that's another one.
See, that was set to get
We
started.
had a good contractor on that one.
Yeah, I walk my dog there every morning, so I've been keeping an eye on it. Also, just confirming on Rockfield, the median there by Lake Forest. We're talking about a raised concrete center divider, basically from Lake Forest to,
It's where, this is to replace, you know the delineators that we have up?
right,
Right, it replaces those. So wherever
with a
those
raised concrete
delineators are.
divider.
Correct.
Okay, that'll,
Right.
because the rest of the way is that way too. That's just that small
Right, yeah,
section.
we're just doing that strip, because, yeah.
Okay, so when you said you're going to do the median, that's what we're talking about.
Correct.
Doing that. Okay, thanks.
Any other commissioners?
Thank you for the update.
I think this is a receive and file. Are we supposed to make a motion and vote on this one, or? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion to
I'll
receive and
second.
file.
Director comments? Does staff have any comments?
No, other than, did we vote on the receive and file, or we don't? No, we don't need to. Okay, thank you.
I have only one, because this is only once in a lifetime probably. I'm wishing my son happy birthday. It's October 7th, so happy birthday, Kono. So that's it for me. I doubt he's watching, but I'm just saying.
You never know.
Well,
This is
thanks
from
for
Dad.
being here. Thanks for being here since, you know,
Moving on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Armando?
just thanks for the in-depth and all the information that you provided on that. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Camarena?
Yeah, thank you as well. It seems like there was a lot to catch up on after you were gone for a while, so thanks for the work. Appreciate it.
Vice Chair Reichert?
Thank you for all the reports. Good job, guys. Thank you.
I had one quick question I forgot to ask. The radar warning device that flashes if you're going too fast, I forgot to ask that during item 2. There was a comment, it was out, and then somebody else had asked if there could be another one. What's the process for that? If any resident in the city wanted one of those on the street, how do they go about doing it, just generally?
Yeah, so they typically would just call directly to me or go on ALF or Ask Lake Forest. I'll reach back out to them and see if it's appropriate for us to put that type of radar feedback sign out there. We have a few throughout our city. I do want to make sure that everyone understands that it, again, is just a sign we can enforce via cameras or enforcement in that, because I know we are moving towards that. The state is moving towards that in a preliminary pilot program for certain cities. If that becomes law, we certainly will start coming back to the Traffic and Parking Commission to consider locations where we could enforce via cameras. That's similar to, I have flashbacks and PTSD from the red light cameras because that went away pretty quickly. So hopefully that doesn't happen with this program, but that is something that they would just go through my division, and we will evaluate whether or not it's appropriate to do so. Or to be able
So those trailers aren't calibrated?
Those are calibrated to a point, but then we do see concerns because there's an opportunity for those that want to exceed the speed limits. We have obviously restrictions on that to blanket out before it gets to excessive speed so that they want to just race it. But then there's other things that with that, it is just a flashing light back telling you what it is. Most people who are speeding, they know they're speeding. It captures people's attentions for, I would say, the first couple months, but after that, it becomes dull to most drivers because they familiarize themselves with that program or that feedback sign, and then it just goes back to the way it was. What we are doing, and I think this is something interesting, and maybe I'll bring back as a kind of educational item, is we are utilizing different type of technology that uses third-party probe data. We've been discussing this with the residents who call us and say there's a speeding problem. What we're doing is we're taking the data that is from your cell phones. So your cell phones transmits data to third parties. So if you have Google Maps or something like that that you accepted to utilize, we get that data from these sources. They aggregate that into usable data, which tells us how much cars are going through our streets, how fast you're going, origin, destination. It doesn't identify you specifically, but it shows the patterns and trends. And so we have data all the way up from we have data from 2021 all the way up to July of this year. And so we're pretty accurate as long as people have their phones on, which is more times than not. While driving, walking, or biking, we have that data at our fingertips. We have it for a trial period because the SCAG provided some funding for us to utilize that. And so I'm utilizing that to address speeding concerns because as some of you may be aware, sometimes the perception of someone going fast or faster in front of you and you're standing still may not translate to be over the speed limit. They're usually around 20 below the speed limit. It just seems that they're going a lot faster than that. This allows us to evaluate whether or not a speeding problem is occurring by giving us not only the 85th percentile, outliers, or the average speed throughout all those years. So it gives us opportunities to showcase when these people are potentially exceeding the speed limit and opportunities where we say, hey, it's not a problem. Yes, there are one or two that are exceeding the speeds, and that's where we will ask our Sheriff's Department, when resources and time allow, for their officers to come out during those periods because we see that it's habitual, that they are there constantly at this time. We will then provide some of that feedback to our Sheriff's Department to utilize their discretion in enforcement.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and Director Wheeler, thank you as well. This meeting is adjourned. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 4th, 2024.